in this video, I'll be going over assignment 6, which is exercise 3.24 in the book, odd or even. It says write an app that reads an integer, then determines and displays whether it's odd or even. Hint, use the remainder operator. An even number is a multiple of 2. Any multiple of 2 leaves a remainder of 0 when divided by 2. So if we look here in section 3.8 arithmetic, you can see this chart here where it has the operations and the operator. So the remainder operator is this percent sign here. And what the remainder operator does is it tells you what the remainder of one number divided by the other is. So it gives you the remainder, right? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create our app. So let's go to our Visual Studio and click Create New Project. And we're going to find where it says Console App. And yours might look a little different than mine. That's okay. It'll pretty much be the same thing. So it'll say Console App, and then make sure that it says C# over here. So there's Console App and Visual Basic. We don't want that. There's other ones that are a little different too. We want this one right here. This is Console App and C#. So it says C# down here. And we're going to go ahead and click it, and then click Next. And then we're just going to give this a title of whatever we want so that we'll remember where it's at. Yes, I'm just going to overwrite it because I already have one. That's okay. And we're just going to delete, if there's something there already, we'll just delete that. All right. It says write an app that reads an integer. Let's go over here to where it says section 3.6. Another C# app, adding integers. All right, so we're gonna just take a look here at this image, and we're gonna basically copy what it's doing here. So first we're gonna create a using directive, which will be using system, and then we're gonna give it a class, and we'll go over a little bit more here how to give it a class and a class name. Okay, so first we'll do our using directive, and this is I'm just typing in the comments here so we know what it is later. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to type the keyword using, and then with a capital S I'm going to write the word systems, if I can spell it right. Using system, not systems, system. And that's our using directive that we'll be using for just a basic app is using, which is all lowercase, and system, which is which has a capital letter, and after the word system we're going to have a semicolon. All right, and then we're going to move on to give it a class, and this is a keyword class. And so this here is we're going to give it a class declaration or a name to go by. So here they have a class of addition. Okay, and it says okay, so I'm going to name mine because the exercise is called, let's see, odd or even. I'm just going to name mine odd or even. So class, I'm going to give it a name which starts with a capital letter, and each word, if I'm having multiple words, will begin with a capital letter. Okay, class, and I'm naming it odd or even. I'm declaring that this is a class named odd or even. All right, so it says here, remember that the body of each class declaration starts with an opening left brace and ends with a closing right brace, which means you're going to go ahead and give it this brace here where it kind of looks curly on the edges, a curly brace, right? You're going to give it an opening and closing. So right here, this is our closing one. We're just going to write a comment. We'll say end odd or even. Actually, we can say end of our class, right? Because that's the end of our class, odd or even. And anything between these brackets will be within that class. So first thing we're going to have within that class is our main method. And what we're going to do on our main method is what it shows up here. We're going to write static void main. And this main method, like it states right here, the main method begins the execution of the app. Okay, so we're going to write static void main. Let's see, I guess I don't go into it further here. But we will write static void main, just like you see on here, with parentheses. What we're doing is we're going to write the static keyword, static, which just means that the main method belongs to the class itself and it's not an instance of the class. So it allows the method to be called without creating an instance of it. It means it's the method itself and it's part of this class here. It's not an instance of the class. Okay, and then the next keyword we'll be using is void. So what void means is that it doesn't return any value. So this main method that we're creating right now is not going to return any value. It means it's void. Okay, and then we're going to write the word main, and main is the name of the method that we're using. That's where the app itself will start. And we have these empty parentheses here because it means that the main method, if this is empty here, it's just an opening and closing, let's see that a little better, just opening and closing parentheses with nothing inside, it means that this method isn't going to accept any arguments and it's not going to receive any parameters from the command line. So within the main method, we're going to once again have opening and closing brackets. So this is the opening, this is the start of the main method, and this is the end. So let's type that in, end main method. So anything in between these brackets is going to be part of the main method. All right, now we're going to look at what we're going to do next. So we have our class, we have our main method. Okay, we're not quite ready to. So let's see what the exercise is telling us to do. It said write an app that reads an integer, then determines and displays whether it's odd or even. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to prompt the user to enter a number, right? We want the user, we need someone to actually put a number in there in order to check if it's odd or even. We need to enter a number, right? So that's the first thing we need to do. Then we're gonna enter a number, and then we want the computer to be able to read the number. But we don't just want the computer to be able to read the number. We want it to be able to read the number as a number. And in this case, specifically as an integer or a whole number, because we're checking if it's odd or even, so it'll be an integer. And the keyword for integer is int. So we're going to read the number. We want it to read the number as a number. It's the first thing that we want to do. After we have a number to read, right? So first thing, we want a number to read. Then we want to be able to read it. And then we're going to want to check if, right? We're going to want to check if, and this is where we'll go to where that hint was about using the remainder operator to check if the number is, if you divide the number by 2 and the remainder is 0, then we'll know that the number is even, right? So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, then we want it to display that to the console. So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, then we know that it's even. So we want it to display to the console that the number is even. Right? And then we're going to say otherwise or else, because remember this will be an if-else statement. Okay? So else we want it to display to the console that the number is odd. Okay, that makes sense, right? So first we want a number from the user to be able to put into the console. And then we want to be able to read that number, but not just to read the number. We want to be able to read it as an integer, as a whole number. And then we want to know if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. Because then if it does, we want it to display to the console that the number is even. Else, remember this is an if-else statement, else we're going to display to the console that the number is odd. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to, actually let's go to displaying a line of text. Nope. Let's go to 3.6. It says another C# app adding integers. No, maybe not. I thought it was here. Okay, prompting the user for input. That's what we're doing now, right? We are going to prompt the user to enter a number. So how do we do that? Is by a console.writeLine. And how they did on here was enter the first integer. And that's how they're prompting the user. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do a console.writeLine. And then we're going to do it just like they did here. We have a set of parentheses. So we have console.write capital line capital. And then we have a set of parentheses. And then within the parentheses are double quotations. And that's where we're going to write what we want displayed on the console. So if we want to prompt the user to enter a number, we can type enter a number or anything similar, right? And then after this parenthesis here, so console.writeLine, opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and we're going to have a semicolon after that closing parenthesis. So this line is going to end with a semicolon. These are just comments over here. Okay, so it should say enter a number, and let's go ahead and check. We're going to push this little button here that looks like play, and we're going to check what it shows in the console now. And so far we can see it says enter a number, but then it also says all this other stuff. If we want it to not say that, we can enter console.readLine, and we're just going to leave it empty. And what this does is it just, it keeps the console window open. So this, once you open it, it displays enter a number, and then it's done. So once it's done, it displays all this. So if you keep it open, it's not going to display that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a console.readLine, and this is what will keep the console window from closing and displaying a bunch of stuff in the terminal, right? Or in the window. Okay, and that's just kind of just to remember later maybe why it's there, but that's not really important. You don't have to do that. It just makes it easier to see what we're actually displaying on there. So now there's not all that extra stuff. You can see it just says enter a number. All right, now we're going to read the number as a number or integer. So how we're going to do that is by using this int.parse right here. Okay, so first they're saying, okay, well, int.parse means it's trying to, let's see, it's trying to convert what it's reading into an integer. So that way it's not reading it as a word, but it's reading it as a whole number. So first, the console.readline is going to read what the user inputs, and then int.parse is going to parse it and what it does when it parses is it converts what it's reading into an integer or a whole number. Instead of reading it as a word, it's reading it as a number. And on this side here, we have a variable. So we're going to create a variable to save this number to. Okay, and this, because it's a number that we're saving, it will also be an integer. So we're going to have a variable with a type of integer. So we're going to write int first to know that it's an integer. And we're going to call the variable number, and we're going to assign it the value of, and that's where you use the equal sign. Okay, so we're going to assign it the value of int.parse because we want it to read the input and convert it into an integer or a whole number instead of reading it like as a word. So int.capital parse, P-A-R-S-E, and then we're going to have a set of parentheses, and then within that set of parentheses we want the console to be able to read the number that was put in, that was entered. So we do that by console.readline, just like we did at the bottom. And the console.readline is going to end with an opening and closing parenthesis. So if we take this out, int.parse, and what we're parsing is what's within these parentheses, and what we're parsing is the number that it's going to read. And we're going to do that by console.readline, the same as we entered here. We're going to enter that right here, console.readline. So there should be an opening and closing parenthesis, and then a second closing parenthesis for the int.parse. And then after that second closing parenthesis, we're going to add a semicolon. Okay, let's just move those a little bit. So it should look like this. It should be we're declaring a variable. We're declaring a variable with the type of integer, and we're assigning it the value of the number that's being input here, the number that the user is inputting. We're going to read that, and we're going to convert it into an integer, a whole number, by parsing it. And then that's what the value that's assigned to number. So now number will be equal to whatever number is put in by the user, and it'll be read as a number. Okay? I hope that kind of makes sense. All right, so now we're going to create our if-else statements. So let's say if-else statement. And we're going to say if the number is divisible, or if the number is divided by 2 and has a remainder of 0. So we're going to use the if keyword, if, and then we're going to use the parentheses again. And whatever is in this parentheses, that's what we're saying if. So what we want in this parentheses is we want it to say if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. And remember, we're going to use the remainder operator, which is the percent sign. So we're going to say if the number, well, we know the number has been given this name. Oops. Oops. All right, sorry. if we know that the number that's being input is being read and turned into an integer, and it's been assigned, this variable here, number, has been assigned to that number. So we know that the number is actually going to be number. So we just have to type in the word number, because we've given that number the value of the number that's being entered. So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of, so that's where we're going to use the remainder operator. If the number divided by 2, because remember that's what the remainder operator is the number divided by another number, what is the remainder, right? That is the remainder operator. So number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, right? So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, if the number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, that's what this is saying, right? And what we're going to do is we don't need a semicolon here. We're saying if the number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, then we want it to do this. And what we're going to do is use opening and closing brackets or braces here, the curly braces, okay? And within those curly braces is what do we want it to do. If the number is divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, then, and we wrote it in the comments here, then we want it to display to the console that the number is even. Well, how do we display it to the console? Remember, the console.WriteLine is how we display things to the console. So that's exactly what we're going to do here, a console.WriteLine. And we're going to remember our parentheses and our double quotes. And then what do we want it to display to the console? We want to display that the number is even. So we can say exactly that. We can say anything similar. The number is even, right? And then remember, at the end of our console.WriteLine, at the outside of the parentheses, we need our semicolon. Okay, the whole thing won't work if we forget a little syntax error like a semicolon. Okay, so now we have, if the number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0. Yes, I'm going to keep saying this. Okay, if that's the case, then we're going to display to the console the number is even. Else, what do we want it to do? Well, first we have to write the keyword else, and then we're going to have an opening and closing bracket. And what goes in between this opening and closing bracket here is going to be what we want it to do. So if the number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, we're going to write to the console the number is even. Else, what are we going to do? We want to display to the console that the number is odd. So we're going to do console.WriteLine with the parentheses. Inside the double quotation, the number is odd. And then remember, this is console.WriteLine, and on the other side of our parentheses, we're going to have a semicolon. Okay. So now we have, we're going to prompt the user, we're going to prompt the user to enter a number, and then we're going to read the number as an integer, and then we're going to create an if-else statement, and we're going to say if the number divided by 2 has a remainder that's equal to 0, then we are going to display to the console the number is even. Else, if the remainder is not equal to 0, then we're going to display to the console the number is odd. Let's get rid of these extra lines here. All right, now let's go ahead and close this. And let's go ahead and check it now. Okay, enter a number 2. The number is even, so that worked. Let's try it one more time. Enter a number, I'm going to enter 3. The number is odd. Perfect. right, and that's it. That's how you do this assignment. I hope that it was easy enough for you to understand, even though I don't word things the best. I hope that you have a much better understanding now. The only thing left to do is save it and make sure you save all. All right, thanks for watching.